our next presenter. She's the managing partner of strategy consulting firm Setili and Associates, whose clients include Coca-Cola, Delta, the Home Depot, and Walmart. She was previously with McKinsey and Kimberly-Clark, and she served as an executive with 2 successful disruptive technology startups, so she knows what she's talking about. So she's going to talk about the agility advantage, how to identify and act on opportunities in a fast-changing world. So put your hands together for Amanda Setili.
Thank you.
There you go.
All right, thanks. Hello. I was really interested that the prior speaker told a travel story because I have a travel story too, but mine's very positive and mine is about brand. So not too long ago, I was on my way to DC for an event and a tropical storm was blowing in and the entire DC-Baltimore area was shut down, no flights. North of there, no flights. And my husband and I were at the airport. Luckily, Delta had rebooked us on a flight the next day, but unfortunately, the flight the next day was after the event that we needed to get to, so it wasn't going to do us any good. So I quickly got on the phone to talk to Delta, and meanwhile started walking, and I went to the customer service desk on Concourse A in Atlanta. Line was like 200 people long. Same thing at Concourse B, same thing at Concourse C. I was desperate to find a way to get to DC, and so I walked up to a gate agent who wasn't too busy at the time, and I said, "Excuse me, but could you help me find a faster way to DC tonight or tomorrow morning early?" And she said, "Let me see if I can help you." Well, meanwhile, folks started to arrive to check in to the flight that she was checking in, and she became a performance artist. She would check people in and then she'd help me, and then she'd check people in and then she'd help me. And she was obviously really in her element. She said to me, "Nobody knows this system better than me. I'm gonna get you there." But time passed, and indeed there really weren't any flights. And she said, I said, "What do? We don't have a flight that we can get where we're going." And she said, "You're just gonna have to trust me. You go home and I will text you when I find you a flight later tonight. It may be late, you're gonna have to trust me." And so we went home and we enjoyed our dinner. And at about 10:30 at night, she texted us and said, "I'm still working on it." And at 12:30 in the morning, she texted me and said, "I'm still working on it." So I went to bed and I woke up in the morning and I found that she had texted me at 3:21 in the morning saying, "Here's your flight, be at the airport at 9:30 in the morning." And indeed, I got to the event, we had a great time. So why do I tell you this story? First, it says that Delta trusted her to represent their brand, and they gave her the power to do something like that for a customer, to get the customer where they wanted to get on time. Secondly, I trusted Delta because Delta had come through for me in past experiences, and I was willing to go home and trust that this woman, this gate agent, was gonna text me with my flight. And so I think that when you can establish that powerful capability for your employees to take the reins and do something great for your customer, and your customer actually trusts that you're gonna get it done, that speaks to the power of a really great brand. My specialty is agility. And my definition of agility is the ability to identify new opportunities and capitalize on them quickly. Now, I was fascinated by the topic of this conference, which is man versus machine, because I've always loved data. I was an engineer, I loved data, I worked at McKinsey, loved data, and so the rise of this big data economy has been really fun for me. But what I notice is it's those stories, those real life interactions that really is where your brand speaks. And when we think about the story somebody told yesterday about Crayola allowing your kid to upload a picture of himself, turn it into a coloring book, color himself, color the dragon, and then put that dragon in the setting of his room with himself, either befriend the dragon or fight the dragon, is an incredible story about harnessing technology to tell a story. And some marketer had to know that little boys love dragons and they would love to see that dragon in their room. And so what we're all about as marketers is the ability to find those stories and make them come to life through technology. And that's what I'm so excited about. Now, machines can learn. Machines learn by looking at statistics. They look at probabilities. How many people said yes? How many people said no? They're constantly doing the mathematical calculation, right? But we learn through stories and anecdotes. And that's the way that we can teach our customers too. So agility has 3 components. The first I call market agility, and that's the ability to spot the opportunity in the first place. So it's the ability to see what's going on in the marketplace, to be very observant of your customers, to notice new trends, to anticipate what might happen next based on what you're seeing now. And most of all, the ability to tell yourself the truth, to not be in the denial about things that are happening in their marketplace, and to have a really constructive conversation in your company. The second component of agility I call decision agility, and that's the ability, once you spot the opportunity, to come up with a really smart and distinctive way of capitalizing on it. Because if you see the same things going on that your competition does, and you respond in the same way that your competition does, you're just going to stay in the same competitive position. But if you can do something different, you can pull ahead of the pack and stay ahead of the pack. The most important part of decision agility is to take some action immediately so that you can begin to learn, because agility is all about learning. The third component of agility, I think, is really the most tricky but the most exciting, and I call that execution agility. That's the ability to turn the ship once you've seen the opportunity, decided how to act, and are headed a new direction, but to enlist everyone in your workforce in going that new direction, to really harness their hearts and minds, because people make 1,000 decisions a day about how they're going to represent your brand, how they're going to respond to customers, how they're going to deal with new things that are coming down the road that you haven't even thought of yet. And if you can establish a clear purpose and give employees enough autonomy to be able to respond on the fly, especially when, as many of you are, you're having to respond to social media things in real time. That's a very continuously updated type of media. You need to be able to loosen those reins and know that people are going to head the right direction and the right direction together. So market agility, decision agility, and execution agility. Many, many companies are good at one of these. And many companies are good at 2 of them, but very few companies are good at all 3. And I hope that during our talk today, I can help you be a little bit better at all 3 of those. So we have to strike a balance, right? That's one of the most common questions that I get is, you know, we want to be consistent, but we also want to be agile. So how do you balance those 2? So I do work with a lot of companies that there's a lot of operational excellence that's needed to just get their brand right. UPS, you got to get the packages delivered on time. Home Depot, the shelves have to be stocked with appropriate product. You know, Delta, the planes have to fly on time. Coca-Cola, you have to be confident that when you open that Coca-Cola, you're really opening happiness. And when you serve that Coke to someone, that they're going to be delighted with the selection that you've made. So we need consistency in our brands. We need a consistent brand experience, customer experience, and we need to be efficient, but we also need to be agile, and agile means learning. So we need to be continuously learning. So when I look at marketing, I think marketing is really in the hot spot. Marketing is really at the intersection of 3 important changes that are going on in our business environment. The first is new technologies. Tons of them here this week, and I'm so excited to see them. Lots of new technologies coming out there, not only for marketing, but for everything that we do in life, and that creates a lot of change that we got to keep up with. The second is new ways of interacting. We're interacting with customers in new ways, but customers are interacting with each other in new ways as well. And the third is microsegments. So microsegments is the fact that we're able to target ever smaller populations who have very distinctive interests and needs, and that people can find each other on the internet who have very specialized interests. You know, people who are interested in dressing up in costumes, or people who are interested in antique boats, or people who are interested, who love golden retrievers. There's pet sitting services called Only Goldens. They only pet sit for golden retrievers. So who would have thought that that would have been a viable business model, and yet it is. So marketing is at the intersection of all this change. Let's talk about each of these three in turn. New ways of interacting. Think about customer collaboration. Not only do we collaborate with customers, but customers collaborate with each other, and they are also willing to do an incredible amount of work for us. Look at threadless t-shirts. Customers come on and design t-shirts, which then customers buy. Customers are willing to contribute tech support, they're willing to contribute advice. Anytime that I have a problem with any product or wondering how to use it, how to use a hair care product, how to use a Google product, how to use anything, how to assemble something that I've brought home and need to install, a different way of using a product, I can always just Google it and I find other customers who are willing to help me with that problem. And if you can harness that energy, you can not only get customers to advocate for you, but you can also access a great deal of learning because you can watch and observe what they're saying, what they're doing, and you can learn a lot about how you can enhance your products. The second major trend that I think is fascinating about how customers are interacting is the sharing economy. So I hope that some of you guys have used Uber. I don't know if they have Uber on Amelia Island, but I just think it's the neatest thing because suddenly there's this way that people can work part-time on flexible schedules. I can find a ride whenever I need it. It's cheaper, it's reliable, it's within a minute. They always dispatch the closest person to pick me up. And that would have never been possible before. But there's also other things that are being shared. If I have an extra parking space, I can find someone who wants to use that parking space. If I have a dog that I want someone to spend time with during the day while I'm at work, I can access a matchmaking service that matches me with someone who wants to spend time with my dog. It's really wonderful, and it enables us to create new products and new ways of interacting to engage customers with our brand. And the final thing that I wanted to give as an example of new ways of interacting is the fact that customers are engaging with our brand far earlier than they used to in the discovery process. They're doing research without actually talking directly to us. They're learning about our brand very early, and they're staying engaged far after the purchase in very interesting ways. So we're having frequent and personalized conversations with our customers, but a lot of it is happening online. A lot of it is happening by putting out the appropriate content that they can find on their own or by listening to other customers. Now let's look at microsegments. There's three components of this. The first is this microcultures, which is the fact that I might be able to have more in common with someone halfway around the world who is a like-minded individual who shares common interests with me than someone who lives next door to me, and suddenly I can find those people. If you watch those microcultures and notice their interests and cater to them, there's two powerful reasons to do that. One is you can find new pockets of growth, things that are small now that are going to be big in a few years, and if you jump on them early and cater to them, you can be there when they grow. And secondly, they're often much more profitable than your run-of-the-mill customers. They're very interested in your product, right? And so if you can customize for them and cater to them, you can create niches of profitable growth. The second is customization. Now, anything can be customized, and generally, when you customize something, it's worth a lot more, so you can make more money. But the other thing is you learn through customization. So if you give customers a lot of choices, they're going to pick one of them. And instantly, you know which one they preferred, and you can morph your product line more in that direction. So it's a very powerful tool for learning about your customers. And the last is localization, the ability to, when you're using an app, just hit near me and find a product near you that's going to solve your problems. The ability for beacons to be used in stores, for all sorts of things to be very localized to exactly where I am at any point in time, which of course gives you great information about where you need to stock product, where you need to put your media buy, and all those sorts of things. And the last is technology. So this is This chart is courtesy of Scott Brinker. I did not create it, and I don't expect you to be able to read all these logos, but the point is there's tons of new technologies out there for marketing. This is just marketing technologies. Now, it can be overwhelming, but the great thing about it is there's people who specialize in each of these aspects: social, gamification, personalization, content marketing, and they're there to help you. I'm sure you've had conversations this week with people who are willing to help you and are very knowledgeable about specific aspects of marketing. So I think that's very exciting, and I think it's a way for man and machine to work together to create more value for all. So, simple picture. This is my Monopoly picture. Opportunity is created by change. Change creates opportunity. And there's three interesting things about this picture. The first is that the little man is listening. He's listening really hard to what customers are telling him. He's listening really hard to market trends, and he's trying to anticipate what might happen next and how to be prepared. The second is that his hand's out like this. He's saying no to a lot of stuff. He's staying focused. He's shedding parts of his business that don't fit with the new direction. He's not getting confused by a growing to-do list. He's saying no to a lot of stuff and yes to a few things that are in the right direction. And the third is he's got his toe out. He's putting his toe in the water. He's testing the waters, and he's starting to learn as soon as possible. When he decides to head in a new direction, he takes action immediately and begins to learn. So we all need to keep our ear out for new opportunities, say no to other things, and put our toe in the water so that we can start to learn. Why is this important? Many of us, we innovate a product, we put it in the market, and then we, lo and behold, find out that somebody copies us and we become a commodity. Change is what creates the opportunities for us to pull ahead in a distinctive way, and it can create a lasting competitive advantage that can stay with us for a long time. Yesterday, I loved the story about Zyrtec. It was the second brand. It became the top brand. They stopped doing promotions. They started creating ways for the customer to engage with them, to keep a log of what was happening with their allergies. They created something useful to engage with the customer, and they pulled into first place. And that will probably be a lasting advantage for them. So when you're in a horse race, look for change. That creates opportunities to pull ahead. So what are some keys to spotting market opportunities? I've got a few examples here. The first is Airbnb. Has anybody here used Airbnb? It's a really, really interesting thing. It's not appropriate for every travel situation, but it's a fascinating thing. So what I love about Airbnb is they just love the problem that they're solving for people. They got started when two of the founders decided to start a company together, and they were both designers, and they were sitting at home kind of doodling in their sketchbook, what kind of company could we start? And they got a notice in the mail that their rent was going up 25%. Well, they did the very next month. They didn't have the money. They needed the money or they were going to be kicked out. And so they looked around their apartment. They knew that there was a big design conference coming to town that week. And they saw that they had a little extra room in their living room, and they opened their closet, and they saw that they had an airbed there. And they said, you know, we've got an airbed and a couch. Why don't we just put an ad out, a website up real quick that advertises that we're willing to take a few people from this design conference because all the hotels were full. So they put the website up overnight, and lo and behold, they got 3 customers immediately. One was from India, one was from Boston, and one was from Utah. They welcomed these people into their house, gave them the airbed, a place to sleep, and not only that, but they took them to their favorite Mexican restaurant, and they made sure they knew how to get to the design conference and how to use public transportation. And they got to know these people, and they had a great time, and they said, you know what, we're on to something. There's people who are up for a travel adventure and would like an interesting place to stay, and there's people like us who are interested in meeting new people and have a need for additional income and extra space in their homes. And by putting those two together, we can create something really new and different. So they loved the problem. In fact, they said they were married to the problem. That gave them the tenacity and the purpose to evolve and learn over the next couple of years until now 60,000 people a day, I think, are staying in an Airbnb. And it's really quite a phenomenon. It's created a whole new market out of nothing and created new sources of income for people and new places to stay and new sources of travel adventure. Second example, Salesforce. So what's so cool about Salesforce is they really get customers involved in their business. Their customers are developing new applications using their products. They advocate for their products. If you look at their website, there's an exalted position that you can get called an MVP for Salesforce, and there's some criteria you have to meet in terms of how much you've used their products, how much you've built on their customization platforms, how much you've advocated for them. But the funny thing is they only choose a few MVPs, but guess what one of the prizes is for becoming an MVP? You get to advocate more. So they've just created this marvelous ecosystem of customers doing work for them, customers marketing for them, customers developing for them, and they've created a way for their entire ecosystem to grow faster, learn faster, and they've created a tremendous competitive advantage. Home Depot. Mix with your customers and mix with your front line. If you go to Home Depot on a Thursday, you're fairly likely to be served by not somebody who actually works in the store, who's a specialist in plumbing or electrical or garden, but maybe one of the senior management team. Every officer in Home Depot picks 10 people from their team and the teams that they work with to work in a store every single Thursday, 1 quarter a year. So what that gives them is very on-the-ground understanding of what's realistic and what's not realistic in terms of pushing out to the stores. A very realistic impression of what the employees can do and what they can be motivated around, and great empathy for the customer, great understanding of the customer needs. That's been one of the things that has enabled them to pull ahead of Lowe's, and even in a difficult market the last few years, be very successful. So mix with your customers. And as marketers, that's very important, but it's very important to get your senior management, the people who are general managers, P&L managers, to also do that. PetSmart, good example of paying attention to outliers. Now, who would have thought 5 or 10 years ago that pet clothing would be such a big category? One of the only categories that really did well during the recession was pet products in general. And pet clothing was a very growing sector of that. Now you can not only dress your dog up in a tuxedo or a ballerina outfit or a baseball outfit, you can dress up your guinea pig or your hedgehog. It's crazy, but people like to do this. These are outliers. PetSmart has not only noticed trends like that, but they've catered to distinctive customer groups like second-generation Hispanic pet owners or gay pet owners. They've paid attention to outliers, and they've been able to find growing niches, which have made them very successful. And the final one is seek truth. So I can't tell you how many times as a consultant I've come into a company, and in a group, everybody will say, everything's going great, no problem, we're taking advantage of all these trends. And then I'll set up one-on-one meetings with people to understand just the backstory and what's going on in their function. And they'll all whisper to me as if it's a secret that there's a big troubling trend going on and they don't know what to do about it. Well, I hear the same thing from everyone, but they're not willing to say it in the group setting. So telling the truth and being very honest is very important. And recognizing those dissenters, those people who are the naysayers and the skeptics, and getting them involved in the conversation is really important. So, think like an explorer. Interact with your customers in new ways and learn from them while you're educating and influencing them. So these explorers, they didn't have the whole map that told them exactly where they were going. They had kind of a general idea if they were following a river or they were going to follow the edge of a mountain range or something, but they were really drawing the map as they go. And that's what we're all doing, is drawing the map as we go. We've got to treat every day as an opportunity to learn more about our customers and more about what's going to resonate with them and work with them. Another key is develop more than one alternative for each opportunity that you see. There's a real trap in saying, oh, I see an opportunity, I think I'll attack it this way, and just heading off in that direction without taking the time to say, what are some really different ways that I could attack this problem? By creating different alternatives, you, one, develop much more creative ideas. Two, you're much more likely to do something different than your competitor. And three, you're going to develop 3 or 4 different things that you can test in the marketplace, and you might get some surprises. So always develop more than one alternative. In order to do this, it's really helpful to assemble a very diverse team to do it. You need creative people, which many of you are creative people, but you also need people who just know the nuts and bolts of the business. What can we and can't we do? What's feasible? Can we get stock to this market in time? Things like that. You need analytical people. You need skeptics. And you need people who can build buy-in throughout the organization, people who can sell your story, people who can if there's a difficult change in direction that's going to be required, who can help ease the way that direction. So think about each of these people as you're putting together a creative team to be able to act on an opportunity. And think about getting not only other functions in your company involved, but also people from outside your company. Look to other companies that you can involve, benchmark versus, just ask them questions about how they're treating a similar opportunity. Talk to customers, talk to suppliers. You get the idea. Reach out. If I haven't already said it 25 times, experiment constantly. And that's been a big theme of this show, which I think is so exciting. Use prototypes. Get something out there, even if it's simple. In fact, it's even better if it's simple, because if it's simple, people aren't afraid to trash it and say, no, I do it completely differently. If the prototype is too sophisticated, sometimes people on your team are afraid to say that they think they could make an improvement. Google Glass is a really interesting example. It's not a blockbuster product. In fact, I think they've even stepped back and are maybe going to rethink it before they ever reintroduce it. But what's fascinating about Google Glass is the first prototype was just a really clunky, ugly thing. There was like a laptop in a backpack with these big wires going out and this very unattractive thing on the guy's face. You can see it there in the top left corner. But they got it out into people's hands. They got it out into people's hands who they thought would be very thoughtful about how to use this product, and people who they really were willing to learn from. So they found that airplane mechanics could find Google Glass to be very helpful, because while their hands were busy with tools, they could refer to an instruction manual about how to, what was involved with that particular piece of equipment. They found that surgeons could be performing surgery, their hands were sterile, their hands were full and busy, but they could allow another surgeon far away who was a specialist in that particular procedure to view what they were viewing and give them advice along the way. And they found that firefighters could reference blueprints of the building so that they could find the people in the back pockets of the building more easily and save lives. So anytime that your hands are occupied, dirty, sterile, or anytime you need others to take the same view as you can and give you advice, this is a great thing. They learned by prototyping, getting it out there with a few very forward-thinking customers that they could learn from. So finally, if you look at this picture, I asked many companies, which side of the page do you feel like you're on? A lot of people feel like they're on the left side of the page. They feel like people are headed different directions. They're allowing projects that maybe weren't very viable to stick around for a long time. They've got a lot of different things on their to-do list. They're not headed the same direction, and as a result, they're really making zero progress, because when you add all those vectors together, it adds up to zero, right? But if you can even get a moderate amount of strategic alignment, you can be so much more powerful. And that's one of the roles of marketing, is to tell the story internally so that everyone internally knows the direction that you're going, and they can communicate a similar story to the customer, and that when they get the chance to make decisions every day, because we all get to make decisions every day, and we're all encountering new situations every day, new technologies, new customer situations, new problems, we can act in concert and move the same direction. This is one of the secrets to execution agility, is to have that common destination so that we can all wing it along the way and get to the same place in the end. You can reach me at amanda@setili.com. We've got a few books over here when you walk out that you can pick up a free book if there's still some left. If there's not, I've got some little bookmarks out there that have my contact information, and if you either send me or hand me your contact information, I'll try to get you one after the conference, if you aren't lucky enough to get one of the ones that's out there. And I'd be happy to talk about with any of you, any of these issues, because I'm just fascinated by these topics and fascinated by how we can all become more agile. It's something that everybody wants, but very few people really feel like they've achieved. And I really like to listen to your story and think about how you can become more agile. Thank you very much.